Finish It February is finally done. And this week's video is a Knits and Babbles. If you guys haven't watched one of these before, it's a podcast type episode where I showcase all of my whips, my finished knits, acquisitions, basically anything related that happened during that month. And this month is February, which was Finish It February. And at the beginning of the month, I said I would take part in it. I think it was successful. I ended up finishing 4 projects this month, which I think is probably one of my most, I'm blanking out on the word. Eventful month? My busiest month. By the way, if you're new here to this channel, welcome to my channel. My name is Ev, and I like to talk about all things knitting. Letting you know in advance, this green cardigan is not hand knit. It is just something that I threw on before starting to film. So we're gonna start off with the finished knits first. And the first one that I'm gonna show you guys is the one that I wore in last week's video. And it is actually, so this is a cardigan that I designed myself, my own pattern, and I will actually put it on for you. That's why I wore a different sweater. I knew I was gonna take it off. And it is a type of raglan increase cardigan, a raglan shoulder cardigan. It has a 1x1 rib around the collar, around the sleeves, and at the bottom. 2 things that I think separate this cardigan from many others is number 1, the pocket. I said that so confidently. Is number 1, the pocket. I wanted to have a slight kind of angled pocket, not your typical. Most knits have like a very flat on pocket that is reached from above. I kind of wanted this one to have like an angled pocket. And number 2, the second thing that makes this cardigan different is the snap buttons. I went with this approach because I thought it would be easier to just wear on and off, and I like the look of the snap button for now. I think it looks so much neater. It's like flatter and kind of also has more of a store-bought look, as in I find when I sew buttons, I'm not too sure if it's my sewing ability or my button attachment technique. The buttons always tend to just like floop over. So I wanted to try this new method, and I think it looks and worked. I'm really happy with it. This cardigan was knit up with Koigu Gotland wool, and it's Gotland and Corriedale wool. So another aspect that makes this cardigan even more special is of course the yarn. And this is like a kind of speckled gray rainbow yarn, which at first I was really not sure, but the more I was knitting up the cardigan and it was coming together, the prettier I thought it looked. It's a little bit of a woolly fiber. So it's not the softest, but it's not itchy. It's just rustic, but not my most rustic yarn. I think there's like still a softness to it that makes it all warm and woolly. I could easily wear this even right now. Like I'm wearing a tank top right now, so my arms are completely like open, like it's bare on my skin. It's not itchy or bothersome at all. So this cardigan is a pattern that I am writing up. It would be my very first cardigan pattern, and I'm thinking about calling it the ÈVEryday knit cardigan. And we'll get a little bit more into the name soon. I am kind of slowly rebranding my kind of knitwear design and just my website. And if you guys haven't checked it out, there's not too much on there right now, but of course, as more patterns come along, hopefully it does, you know, develop a little bit more. Right now, my main pattern that is being sold there is my leftover candy socks and just free patterns, which were just written and put up. The free patterns weren't test knitted, or I do want to revisit those patterns and make them legit. February was not only a very active knitting wise month, but it was also a month where I grew a lot as a knitter and knitwear designer, because the second knit that I finished is actually, I posted this over on Instagram. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, here's the little picture. I am gonna go take more professional pictures. I finished the sweater actually 2 weeks ago before I posted the picture, but part of me, for some weird reason, this cardigan went by so much more smoothly and I had less of a headache coming up with the design and knitting it up. But this sweater was pretty tedious and there was a lot of unraveling and a lot of uncertainty in myself. Yeah, that's right. To say it's finally done is insane. I started this in November. So this is the sweater, and my main goal for the knitwear design was to have the rib from the collar go down into the sleeve, all the way into the rib of the sleeve. That was the main detail that I wanted to incorporate. I also added a rib under the sleeve that leads into the rib of the body. So I might hate myself when it comes to grading because this is gonna be some math. There's gonna be quite some math to make up for every size to work. So that was the main goal and the main inspiration for the sweater. Just having the lines vertical all line up together and work cohesively. So now the next step for the sweater is actually to grade it and write the pattern. One thing that I want to add to this pattern is alterations. So basically right now it's kind of like a crop top. I'm gonna put it on for you and show you. So this is the sweater on, and I do have a tank top underneath, so it's a little bit bulky. But what I was gonna say is I do want to give the option for whoever is knitting it to either have the regular turtleneck collar that folds up at the top, or give the option to have a folded collar, depending on which way you want to wear it. That's what I really like about this sweater. And basically have the option right now, it's a little bit cropped, and that's just the way I like it, just the way I wanted it with the rib. But basically I want to add the option to have the sweater just be a more traditional length body sweater. But I'm actually really happy with how the sleeve ended up. And then this is the little, this is Kensington Prairie Farms 4-ply baby alpaca, and I had picked it up at their annual alpaca shearing last spring, and it is super soft, so soft. But because it is 100% alpaca, and alpaca is a very loose drapey fiber, I ended up pairing it with a Drops Kid Silk Mohair. This is just a lighter pink. Can you even tell? I don't know, maybe you can tell on camera. So this is the second finished knit of the month, and this one is going to be called the Everyday Knit Sweater. And if you guys remember when I was knitting this up and casting it on, I originally wanted to give my sweater a berry name, kind of have a berry themed collection because I really like berries. But I was drawing inspiration for the name from, like, let's say this was purple yarn, I would name it like a purple berry. But the thing that kind of iffed me about it is right now I want to knit a second one of these as I finish the pattern, just to make sure it all makes sense and everything works up. So I want to knit another one of these. And I was deciding to go with white yarn, but I was thinking about it, if I'm naming it something like after the purple berry, if I'm naming it after a purple berry, like let's say I want to knit it in yellow, like that no longer works. And it was kind of confining myself to be like in this one box. Like if I made a strawberry sweater, I feel like it would need to be red and I wouldn't be able to knit it with orange. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like I was just kind of really confining myself to be stuck with that one particular yarn color, which doesn't really matter, but in my mind anyways. So that's kind of what I was thinking. And because my brand that I'm kind of slowly creating with my knitwear, I really wanted a name that kind of added and had my name in it, which would make it more unique and more interesting. And I thought of everyday because I want to create designs that are for everyday wear and the everyday knitter. And I just thought, you know what, put the accent and like make the և capital, but then just have the regular font for re and day knits. I thought that that would be unique, and just you would think և like me when you see that. And then I just decided, you know what, let's just name the sweaters after it. So if I do shorts, I can do everyday shorts, everyday sweater, everyday hat, everyday, like it's a lot more easier to manage, and then it doesn't have a color associated to it, so then the yarn doesn't have to be a specific color. That is where I was just thinking more in the long term, which one would work better. The next finished knit that I want to talk to you about is, I think I finished it the first week of February, and it is actually my Sophie scarf. I keep doing this, but it's the Sophie scarf. And this was knit up with my very own Handspun yarn. I'm absolutely in love with it. This was the first yarn I ever spun. If you guys haven't checked out the video where I did that, I highly recommend you do. Link will be around. It's a two-parter because there is the unboxing and opening of my very own spinning wheel. I have an Ashford Electric Wheel 3, and I got it a month ago now, and this was the very first spin I ever did. It is a fiber from Fiber Goddess. It was 70% wool and 30% viscose. So it was a really interesting mix, and I'm actually in love with this minty green. I ended up spinning 2 singles and then plying them together. So this is the scarf. I also went and knit up as much as I could with as much yarn as I had, because I had more yarn than the pattern recommended, so my scarf is a little bit bigger. So what I did, which was a recommendation from Petite Knit in the little description or in the comment section, she said if you have more yarn or less yarn, what you can do is weigh the yarn you have, knit till about the middle where it's like increased, knit half of your weight, and then do the decreases with the leftover half of your weight. So that's what I did. I think in the end I had about 270 yards for this scarf. The final knit that I finished in the month of February is another scarf type. It's this cowl. So this is the Andrea Mowry cowl, and I knit this up with 3 different skeins of fingering wool. This was yarn that I picked up from Knit City. Okay, not yarn art, sorry. I have the label right here. It uses ancient yarns, and this was Little Nettle Soft. It's a 68% superwash fine merino, 32% nettle. And then the teal one was a different yarn, but also a fingering weight, and that one had a mohair in it. And this is so mine does look different from the original design that Andrea Mowry knit for this pattern, and that is because the way that I chose my colors and the way I placed my colors. Instead of creating like a box, mine ends up being a lot more small, tiny little square, and you really see all the squares. So the original design, it calls for basically 2 different colored yarns and then a mohair, which is close to one of the 2. So this is the mohair, this is one that is closest to it. By making this one your main color, you end up creating kind of like a box where the mohair and the main color that are closer will surround the 3rd color, if that makes sense. So that's why you have like a more gingham looking knit. I didn't do that. My main color, I wanted it to be the white because I wanted it to be more white. And then I went with a brown, like a chocolate brown, and a teal, like a mermaid, very foresty dark teal. So that is what resulted in this. At first, when I was knitting it up, I was so unsure about it, but the more I went on, the more I just love it. And it's just very different, and it almost looks store-bought. This doesn't look handmade, which is kind of crazy. The pattern was really simple. It's just 2 different rows repeated throughout, and then you just change color as you work it. This is actually called mosaic knitting, which I didn't know when I first started the project. One of you guys actually commented on my videos that this is called mosaic knitting, which I thought was super cool. And that's why I love this. You guys teach me things as much as maybe I teach you. I don't know. I might not teach you anything, but what is really interesting is you knit this in the round like a giant tube, and then at the end you fold it, flip only one side, and sew the 2 sides together. This cowl is casted on with a provisional cast on, which I'm not a huge fan of, but the But I forgot to mention, you actually need to block it when it is flat before sewing the two ends together so that you can get the correct size for the cowl. So now to move on to the current whips. I'm pretty sure if you do follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen this, but I'm currently working up my second Camisole number 4 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I have been inspired by all of you who have been posting your current spring and summer knits, and I keep seeing a lot of tank tops, which is very early in the year, but I love it. I love that we're all at the same time getting excited for warmer, brighter days. So my current camisole is knit up in Sunday by Sadness Garn. Sandness Garn. Someone corrected me once, and ever since then I think about this person, but I feel like I still say it wrong. And it is in this gorgeous kind of dark olive green, almost gray looking yarn. Very olivey. I love this color. I love this color so much. So I am knitting the extra small, and as I said, this is the second time I am knitting this because the first time I did it, I knit it in a cotton yarn and it ended up expanding really funny and I don't really wear it. So I was about to cast on and buy camisole number 9, but then I realized I have this gorgeous pattern in my pool of library, in my library already, and I don't wear the first one I knit up, so why not reknit it? I remember when I had knit it, I loved it. It was a beautiful tank top and I really, really liked it. It's just the cotton over the years and wears, it kind of stretched out, took a shape and kind of held it. And I can't get it to bounce back. So I might unravel it, but yeah. My only worry is I am someone who has a very small chest area. And maybe it was the cotton and the way that it stretched, but I remember when I wore it, the triangles at the front were too big for me and they kind of drooped down on the sides instead of being like instead of the triangles like lining up here, they kind of lined up on the sides, which looked really, really odd. I haven't tried this on. I probably should, considering I think I'm like 2 inches away from finishing the body. So I could try it on, but we're just gonna risk it to get the biscuit. But yeah, that's my only one worry. So next month when I do the Knits and Babbles, I'm gonna show you guys what it looks like, and hopefully knitting the extra small in a more woolly, bouncier yarn will help with the fitting. My second current whip, I'm actually holding it in this bag. This is the bag that I won from the Knit City raffle 2 years ago. So I am currently knitting it from my old scarf, but it is actually this one. If you guys have been on this channel for quite some time, you'll remember last year when I casted on the OG one, but this year we have recasted it on and are knitting it. So this is how far I got. During the month of January, I knit the first colorwork band, and February was basically just spent knitting now my very first repeat. So this section here is the repeat. And basically I need to work this, I think it was 20 times. It took me a month to work one repeat. I ended up switching it back onto very short circular needles so I can just pass the stitches very, very quickly, because on the longer cable I was able to expand it to its full length. But the issue when knitting it was I always had to push my needles along the cable, which was really inconvenient. So right now it lives as a sardine. It's kind of like a sardine right now, all scrunched up together. This is about 500 stitches I have live on here. And this, I forgot to mention, is the Drops of Memory shawl. It's the Drops of Memory from the 52 Weeks of Shawls. It's a rectangle scarf that is knit on the horizontal instead of being knit on the on the vertical instead of, it's knit on the long instead of knit by the width and like going down. It's knit like this. So what I'm trying to say is it takes a lot of time to do one row, and I counted at the beginning of the project and it took me about 15 to 20 minutes to do one row, which is insane. So this is going to be one of those projects that probably reappears in my Knits and Babbles for the next year. And finally, the last whip that I have currently on the needles is my Elisabeth blouse. So I started this about over a week ago, Yeah, over a week ago. And I've been slowly knitting on it while working on my other knits. But this is what it looks like right now. I did the fold over collar and I am starting on the yoke. It's a little bit awkward because the shoulders don't fully fit on the hanger. And I did the fold over collar. I did the German short rows at the back, and I'm slowly working on the yoke till I get to a decent length before doing the V-neck. I read a little bit ahead in the pattern, and you connect the V-neck and work on this. So you work on that part, like the part of the V, before finishing the yoke. So hopefully soon we'll be able to start that. I'm currently knitting it with 3 strands from this lovely cone. I have more yarn caked up, but this is yarn that I picked up from Kensington Prairie Farm, which was picked up at the same time as this lilac one. This is 100% baby alpaca. It is a 2-ply variegated teal, and it is a lace weight yarn. So that is what I'm doing, and it is working up lovely. And the yarn and color is just stunning. We'll see. I'm thinking I might need to do some modifications, however, and maybe make it a little bit smaller so it fits better to what I want it to fit, because this is 100% alpaca. Since I'm holding 3 strands together, it is a little bit tougher, and the 3 strands will kind of like hold the alpaca tighter together instead of just having one sport weight alpaca. But because it is still alpaca, it's going to be drapey, it's going to be loose. So I think if I make it smaller and tighter in certain areas, it'll be better form fitting for myself. I've noticed a few people say that this sweater, when they finished it, they weren't the happiest with it because of the way where the V was falling. So I think before I get too far, I'm going to try it on and maybe do some alterations there to get it to fit to me. I mean, it makes sense. Not every pattern's going to fit everybody the exact way. So I'm going to be very careful and pay much attention when I get to that portion where it needs to connect. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember Petite knit. I think but she's really tall, which I noticed, which most pattern of hers I need to cut short because they go way too long on me. I guess I have a smaller torso. But yeah, so that is just one thing that I'm going to keep on like alert, just where the V-neck meets. So far right now, I've tried it on like this. It looks really, really great, but we'll see. So that is what I'm currently working on right now. Not too much. Leaves room for more projects to be spontaneously casted on, which is always exciting. And as I stated, the next one to probably end up on the needles would be Camisole number 9, which is also a pattern from My Favorite Things knitwear. But one quick little thing I wanted to share with you guys is now we're gonna hop into the acquisitions portion. It's this yarn. So this is yarn that I spun myself. I don't remember if in another video I showed it to you guys just yet. The skeins are really mini because I just have a mini Knitty Naughty, which only measures to 1 yard. I don't have the full one, so this is about how big a skein I can create. But if I remember correctly, this is about 270 yards, 260 yards. That's about how much I've been getting out of my braids. And this is a 2-ply fingering sport weight, depending on where you look in the ply. This one is actually pretty unified in thickness overall, though. There's just like some little sections that are very thin and some sections that are just really overblown, kind of like this pink strand right here. But the rest looks pretty unified. This was fiber from Lily and Pine that I got at Knit City, and it is the first time I attempted a fractal spin. But it's the most colorful yarn I've ever owned in my life, and I honestly have no idea what to do with it. This is 80% BFL wool and then 20% Tucson silk. Also, just a little spinning showcase. I am currently working on my 3rd spin, and I am using this beautiful roving. I'm trying to do a fractal again, but this time it'll be much less intense of a fractal. I only split the second part into 3, so it's going to be a slower color change. But this is the yarn. This is the fiber. I need to get used to saying yarn and fiber. And this is hand dyed by Fiber Goddess. It is oak, OOAK. It is 18.5 Icon Merino, 50 and then baby camel 50%. So it is super, super soft. This was a 4-ounce braid. I was gonna move my spinning wheel, but I'll just show you. This is what it currently looks like. I am trying really, really hard to get a thicker spin because lately the last two, I just spun kind of like when it was plied, it became a fingering sport. And I really, really want to get like thicker yarn. I kind of was inspired and want to try and spin up a yarn kind of like this. Now this is Noro Hanui silk, and if you look at it, this is an Aran weight yarn, and it is a single spun Aran weight. So I would like to spin yarn like this, but right now my habit weirdly is to spin really, really thinly. So I'm just trying to like get used to spinning a thicker yarn. I do plan on plying the one that is currently on my wheel, but this was the inspiration that at some point I do want to spin a thicker yarn. So as always, if you guys have any questions about any yarns that were mentioned in today's video or a pattern, write it down below in the comment section. And as for the patterns that are my own, like the sweater and the cardigan, I'm currently writing those patterns up. I just have a very rough layout and I need to do the grading for it and then get it to a tech editor before test knitting. So I have a feeling those ones kind of have a long way to go before they actually before the test knit actually opens up, but I will keep you guys in the loop, let you know firsthand. If you want to stay more up to date with what I'm up to and my day-to-day, I highly recommend you guys check out my Instagram, and I hope you guys have a lovely, beautiful day. Thank you so much for spending the time with me, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!